Hi, and welcome to another edition of Better Golfer Today, hosted by Tyler Dice Golf. If you didn't notice, we are changing the name of the podcast. I hope you like it. We've been talking about changing the name for the last few weeks and decided to pull the trigger on a new one. And so, moving on, we have a great show planned for you today. Our main topic is going to go over how to improve your pitch shots. As always, I'll be sharing what I'm currently working on, and my tip of the week is going to continue on with pitch shots. So, without further ado, let's get started. So, main topic is going to be on improving pitch shots. You know, improving your pitch shots is a really, really good thing to have in your game. It's important. They can really, really help your scores out a lot, and they can add a lot of consistency to your game. So, what should you work on? How should you practice? What should your wedge setup look like? How should you approach your pitch shot game plan? These are questions you need to ask yourself and figure out, and you need to be honest with yourself when determining, what to start on and what to work on most, and what time you need to dedicate to these shots. Because again, they can be very important and very critical to your scores. Now, to be honest, pitch shots can drive a lot of golfers nuts. They seem to be easy, but knocking shots close to the hole is anything but if you aren't doing things correctly. And, with your pitch shots, this is, with a lot of things in golf, if you're not doing things correctly, you're going to have moments of brilliance. But most of the time, it's going to be going sideways on you. And with your pitch shots, you don't want that. You want things to be consistent, you want them to be solid, and you want to be able to rely on them. And so that's why you're going to be improving them by listening to this podcast. So where do you start? The best place to start is to get a baseline. You need to know what you're doing before, so you can know how to work on it, right? And so the best way to get a baseline is to hit 10 shots. And I would say hit 10 shots from 40 yards, 50 yards, 60 yards, 70 yards, 80 yards, 90 yards, and 100 yards. And see where those shots end up. And so what I'd like you to do, the first stat I'd like you to get is from 40 yards, you hit those 10 shots, figure out what your hit percentage of that green is. Okay, are you hitting it 100% of the time? 90, 80, 70, 60, 50? And so you want to get your hit percentage first. And then take a look at how close you're landing the ball to the spot you're trying to land it. So if you're trying to hit a green from 40 yards, are you trying to fly it 40 yards? Or are you trying to fly it like 35 or 30? And so what I'd like you to know, what I'd like you to pay attention to is to where the ball's landing, and that landing spot is accurate to where you're trying to land it, okay? So that would be your baseline. So figure out what your hit percentage is from each of those yardages, and then figure out if you're landing the ball where you're trying to land it. Because that's going to tell me several things. Number one, can you hit the green? Number two, can you fly the ball the yardage you're trying to fly it? All right, so that's what you want to do to get your baseline. And once you get that information, then we can kind of extrapolate and build on, build on your game from there. Because until we have a baseline, we don't have any idea of where to go. Now, next you want to adopt the clock face technique made popular by Dave Pelz. Off the top of my head, I can't recall exactly what he called it. But this technique is unbelievable, and I've talked about it in a ton of YouTube videos. And since I learned it, and for whatever reason, no one ever taught me this, and I have no idea why no one has ever taught me this and even mentioned this, but this system is unbelievable. And so what this does is it gives you a system that you can visualize that corresponds to certain yardages. So what that means is you imagine that yourself, like the front of yourself, is being superimposed on an old analog clock, okay? So it's got the hour hand, minute hands, and, So imagine yourself standing like, being superimposed on that clock. And at address, and as I say this, it's for a right-handed golfer. So at address, your left arm, which is going to be the hour hand, is going to be pointing at 6 o'clock, right? It's going to be pointing straight down. And so the most common times is, as your left arm points to 7:30, 9, and 10:30, these three quote-unquote times are going to correspond with 3 different yardages that you can hit the ball. And so what you want to do is you want to hit 5 or 10 shots with all your wedges. Hit 5 or 10 to 7:30 with each wedge. Hit 5 to 10 to 9 o'clock with each wedge, and hit 5 to 10 more shots at 10:30 with each wedge. And this is going to give you, depending on how many wedges you have, whether you have 2 or 3 or 4, this could give you 6 to 12 different yardages that you can hit the ball, that you can consistently hit the ball. Because the great thing about pitch shots is the swings are very short, they're compact, and there's not a lot going on. So there's really no excuse to put a little bit of time in, a little bit of effort to hit these shots solid. And so once you get a little bit of the swing grooved, you can figure out exactly how far these shots go using the Dave Pelz, little Dave Pelz system that he's developed. And again, I'm not sure if he's the one that developed it or not, but he's who I learned it from, and so I give all the credit to him for coming up with it. Until someone tells me differently, I'm going, Dave Pelz is who developed it to me. And so that's the great thing about it. So depending on how many wedges you have, so if you have 4 wedges, you now have 12 yardages you can hit the ball. Now, what's even better about this is if you choke down in your club an inch, you have 12 more yardages you can hit the ball. So that's 24 new yardages. And if you choke down another inch, so you choke down 2 inches on the club, you now have 36 different yardages you can hit the ball. So that's 4 clubs, 36 different numbers, which is pretty incredible, I think. So that should pretty much wrap up your distance control issues. A little bit of practice, a little bit of time spent, figuring this stuff out in the range and on the golf course, and you'll have it down no time. I mean, you'll have it down in no time. It's a really, really nifty system. Again, I've literally used it since the day I read about it in Dave Pelz's short game Bible book. By the way, if you want a ultra technical book to read, that's not a very easy book to read because of all the information in it. The Short Game Bible is a good book. I liked it. The amount of information in there is incredible, and some of the theories are a little skewed and not necessarily 100% accurate, just because of the advances in data collection that we have today versus when he wrote the book. But the book itself is great, and you can gather a lot of information from it, and you can learn a lot from it, and the book can really help you sharpen up your short game. So the Dave Pelz Short Game Bible is a good book to read. But yeah, so moving back to the that system. So we're talking about you have up to 36 different yardages with this system, and so that's just, to me, it's mind blowing, and it's such an easy system to learn. And so learn it. And put it in your game. You can thank me later. So I think that should make sense to you guys. And if it doesn't make sense, again, like I mentioned earlier, I've done a bunch of YouTube videos where I talk about that system. So check those out, because if it doesn't make sense on the podcast, the videos, it's actually me in front of a camera doing it. So check out the YouTube videos that I have. Check out my YouTube page, and you'll get some more information on it. And if you don't want to do that, just send me an email, tyler@tylerdicegolf.com, or a Facebook message on Tyler Dice Golf through Facebook. So I check all that stuff. So if you don't understand where I'm coming from this, just shoot me a message. I'm happy to help you out here. Because again, this is a great system, so happy to help get this implemented into your game. And so now that we've established, you've put the work in, you've got your baseline, right? So now that you have a baseline and a system to build off of, what you want to do now is to spend a little bit of time, working on the system some more to figure out which yardages are your best performing yardages. So like we're all going to have preferences here. So it could be 60 yards, it could be 70 yards, it could be 80 yards. But with the wedges that we have in our bag, there's going to be certain yardages that you feel most comfortable with. And so the ones you feel most comfortable with are the ones you're going to want to practice the most first. Those are going to become your go-to distances. And you want to have 2 to 4 yardages for, 2 to 4 yardages that you can consistently rely on. And those will be pretty important to you moving forward. You don't need to have 36 go-to yardages. Although if you did, you would have a big chunk of the golf course figured out. But you don't need that. But if you had 2 to 4 yardages, you can lay up to those yardages, you can play to those yardages more often, and you can use those yardages to your advantage a lot more often. And so, 2 to 4 is great. It's a great place to start because the nice thing is once you get 2 to 4 yardages to start, it's very, very hard to lose that. Okay, it's one of those things that just kind of sticks with you. Once you figure it out and you're like, all right, well, I take the club to here with this club, it's just going to go this yardage. Okay, like once you figure that out, like if you take the club to here with that club and it doesn't go that yardage, then you know something's off, whether it be with your swing or the club is falling apart. And so again, you want to get those 2 to 4 yardages. Those are going to be your go-to yardages, and that's what you want to extrapolate on moving forward. So what do you do next? So you've got a system, you've got a couple of go-to distances, and you know where you started. So let's talk about what and how to practice. I prefer to practice my pitch shots a lot. To me, they're very important. To my game, they're very important, and I like to rely on them a lot. So I practice them a lot. And the reason, and again, like I said, I rely on them a lot, so I practice them a lot. If your game doesn't rely on them a lot, then you don't need to practice them a lot. If you play a golf course where you're hitting 9-iron into every green, then it doesn't matter if you practice them a lot because you'll never have them. But if you're playing a golf course that puts a lot of wedges in your hand or has really, really long par 5s, and so 4 holes around, you're laying up to one of these wedge shot distances, then you're going to be like me. You're going to want to practice these shots a lot, okay, because they're going to be really important. So again, the more you use them, the more you practice, the more beneficial it's going to become for you. And the less you use them, you can get away with practicing them less. But I would always say, always make sure you maintain those couple of go-to yardages. And like I said before, once you figure it out, you got it figured out. But a little bit of practice, 5 or 10 minutes practicing them when you go to the range every once in a while goes a long way. Now, when I'm practicing these shots, what I like to do is I like to practice them in between full swing shots. So say I'll hit 10 shots with a 7-iron. I like to switch gears and hit 10 shots with one of these pitch shots, and I'll pick a yardage. And I'll typically go between 60 and 100 yards. That's the range I like to be in. And so I'll practice a lot of pitch shots from that range. And so I'll hit 10 shots to a target, and then I'll switch and go hitting 10 more full swing shots. And then I'll come right back and go to a different target with a pitch shot. Maybe I did 60 yards to start. The next one I'm going to go to 90 yards. And then I'm going to hit some more full swing shots, come back and hit 70-yard shots. And then hit some more full swing shots and come back and hit 60-yard shots again. And then hit some more full swing shots and then maybe hit 100-yard shots. Okay? And so that's what I do when I practice, and the reason I do that is because when you're on the golf course, you're not usually going to hit, a tee shot and then 2 pitch shots in a row, okay? You're not going to hit 2 partial swings. You're going to hit full swing and then a partial swing, or a full swing, and then a pitch shot, okay? And so you want to ingrain that routine, that sort of mindset that, hey, I'm going to go from full swing to pitch shots. I'm always going from full swing to pitch shots. And so that's what you want to build at the range. That way, when you go to the golf course, it translates a lot easier. So full swing, pitch shots. And that's why I like to do, like, say, 10 full swing shots, and then I just, I go right to pitch shots. I don't go full swing to full swing to full swing to pitch shots. I go full swing to pitch shots to full swing to different yardage pitch shot to full swing to different yardage pitch shot to full swing to different yardage pitch shot. And so it changes it up, and it's more course-like, behavior, and it's going to help, again, it's going to help make things transition easier for you. And so that's what I do when I practice. All right, so now you've got your system, you got your baseline, and you've got an idea of what to practice and how to practice. Let's talk about your wedge setup. Currently, I have 4 wedges in my bag, and I have 0 plans to adjust them. I really like my setup. Your setup can be different, and it can be equally good, if not better than mine. So, this is not the gospel. This is what I do. I have a 60-degree lob wedge. I have a 55-degree sand wedge. I have a 49-degree gap wedge, and a 45-degree pitching wedge. So I know what you're thinking. My pitching wedge is really strong. Yeah, it is, but that's how my set came. So what I did was, my old set had a 49-degree pitching wedge. Now it's a 49-degree gap wedge, and it works fine. So I carry 4 wedges, and I like it that way. I wasn't sure how I'd like it that way. I used to carry 4 wedges and went 60, 56, 52, 48, and I hated that. That it did not work well at all for me. So yeah, no, totally junked that system. When I did that, I ended up throwing out the gap wedge and doing 3 wedges, and liked that a lot better. So personally, I like 60, 55, 49, 45. It's a really good system for me. I don't get a lot of shots. It doesn't happen very often to where I get a lot of shots in that like 118 yard range. So like, doesn't bother me very much. Like a gap wedge for me is 130 yards, but it's very easy for me to dink it down to like 122. And I actually even have a shot that I can hit 115 with that gap wedge. So I cover a big chunk of yardage with those 4 wedges, pretty much between 40 yards and 150. Those 4 clubs have me set. And so that's a big chunk of the scoring game right there, and a big chunk of approach shots right there. I mean, that's just a lot of ground that I can cover with those 4 clubs. So again, I like the 4 wedge system. It works really, really well for me. Again, I've practiced it a lot, and I talk about it a lot in my Facebook private group. And so if you're not in the Facebook private group, consider joining the Facebook private group. It's called the Tyler Dice Golf Insider Circle. It's a good group to join. I talk about pitch shots in there. I hit a lot of pitch shots when I can. A lot of times when I practice, I'll put the camera on and just let it go, and I'll hit pitch shots. And if you can check it out live, that's great. I do Facebook Lives in there, and you can ask questions and stuff. If I can see them, I'll answer them. But yeah, I like to touch on pitch shots a lot. And so again, the Facebook private Facebook group is a good way to get more information out of me on that front. And so that's about all we have for the main topic. Again, it's kind of simple. There was, it's kind of like, get a baseline, figure out what you do, get some go-to shots together, figure out what you do best, develop that, and get the wedge set up correctly. And, it's not very difficult. It's not crazy hard. It doesn't take a ton of work. It's pretty simple. So yeah, that's all we got for the main topic. So let's move on to the tip of the week. And remember, I mentioned it earlier, the tip of the week is going to be about improving pitch shots. Now, I practice pitch shots two ways. I practice landing the shots on a target and not watching where they end up. And I try and land them in a spot and pay attention to where the first bounce lands. And so those are the 2 ways that I practice my pitch shots. And at the range, I can be pretty accurate, can get a pretty accurate read on what the ball is doing by paying attention to those 2 things. So if I'm trying to spin this shot, I notice that the ball that first bounce isn't very big. okay? And it likes to grab a lot sooner. So I can get some pretty good information by watching how the ball reacts to those two ways. And so that's how that's that's a little inside secret to how I practice my pitch shots. So hope you like that. All right, so moving on, let's talk about what I'm currently working on. So I'm working on improving the simple parts of golf. If you watch the most consistent players on tour, they do a lot of the really simple things incredibly good. They aren't always flashy, but they are just solid day in and day out. And it's about doing the simple things well. Always hitting the green, hitting the scoring shots close to the hole, making the putts you're supposed to make, keeping the ball in play off the tee. It's about the little things. And so that's what I'm working on. It's kind of sounds kind of simple-minded, but believe you me, there's about 15 guys on tour, that top 125 at every year, that do the simple things really well. And you don't hear about them all the time, but these guys rack up 40, 50, 60, 70, 80 top 10s in their career, and you've never heard of them. But these guys make millions of dollars playing golf, and they just do the simple things really well. So learn from these guys, because those are the guys you can learn from and you can copy. Those are the guys that do things that everybody else can do. So pay attention to those guys. And so that's what I'm trying to do. I'm working on doing the simple things well. And that's about all I have for you this week. Thanks for tuning in and spending this time with me. I hope you liked the name change. And if you could, I'd really appreciate it if you left me a review on iTunes. It helps grow the show and get it noticed. And so that's how the iTunes algorithm works. The more better reviews you get, the more they put your show out in front of more people that might want to watch it. So if you can, please give me your review. I'd really appreciate it. And if you have any feedback for me, again, Tyler@TylerDicegolf.com. Shoot it my way. Again, thanks for tuning in, and I'll see you next week.